Welcome to this video. Before we begin, I feel compelled to let you know that since I will simply read the text you see displayed without adding anything else, if you prefer you can spare yourself my indecent English pronunciation and read the note yourself. The note presents a few ideas regarding the relationship between the imperfetto and the information which implies completeness of what the verb describes in independent clauses. The discussion focuses primarily on a specific type of the aforementioned information, namely the count of iterations, but toward the end it expands to a broader context. It is important to say that the discussion concerns the use of the imperfetto as an imperfective form opposed to perfective forms, which are the passato prossimo and passato remoto in the indicativo mode and the passato in the congiuntivo mode. This means that what I say here below does not apply to uses of the imperfetto in which it performs special functions and is not contrasted with perfective forms. Examples of such functions are the imperfetto narrativo, including its variant imperfetto onirico, and the imperfetto conativo. If you do not know what these things are, do not worry in the list. As always, in these videos, I will start from a sentence a student said during conversation. The original sentence. Visitavo quella zona tante volte. Although the sentence is grammatically correct, I modified it because since its verb is conjugated in the imperfetto, the text cannot describe what the student had in mind, that is, several visits as a whole, as a single group of events. This imperfetto variant has a more complex meaning, which I will discuss in another video. If you are so inclined, you can practice in this context like this. Write a sentence in which you conjugate the verb in the imperfetto and, using a phrase such as tante volte in the original sentence, mention one or more iterations of what the verb describes. The precision of the count is irrelevant. Then, after choosing an appropriate context, explain in a comment to this video what you think the sentence says in that context. The modified sentence. I chose to conjugate the sentence in the passato prossimo. Ho visitato quella zona tante volte. This variant works, as it describes the visits as a single group of events. What about the variants which use the remaining perfective past forms of the indicativo mood? There are three of them. Visitai quella zona tante volte, avevo visitato quella zona tante volte, dopo che ebbi visitato quella zona tante volte. All of these variants also describe the visits as a single group of events. Why does an imperfective form not work in this case, but any perfective form does? Imperfective forms, such as the imperfetto, describe something as incomplete. In fact, this is the characteristic based on which we choose between imperfective forms and their antagonists. That is, perfective forms. If the original sentence were used to describe the visits as a single group of events, the count of iterations would make the existence of a last visit evident as such, and therefore would present a series of visits as complete. As a consequence, the sentence would be inconsistent, as it would be characterized both by that completeness and by the incompleteness expressed by the imperfetto. On the other hand, any perfective form solves the problem because, by definition, such a form expresses completeness and therefore pairs well with a count of iterations. Let's broaden the scope of this note and summarize it. The above is useful in a broader context than the one discussed so far. It applies to any sentence containing elements which express completeness, for example by providing information about the number of iterations, una volta, tre volte, alcune volte, or duration, 3,5 nanosecondi, un po' di tempo, per sempre. The compatibility between the imperfetto and the information regarding a final moment is also limited. However, this is a significantly more difficult context to analyze. In summary, the point of this note is as follows. In the presence of information which implies completeness, regardless of the precision of that information, the imperfetto of an independent clause cannot describe either of the following: a single group of events or conditions when we count iterations, a single event or condition when iterations are not counted. A couple of additional considerations. Imperfetto with the frequency information. It is useful to note that an expression such as alcune volte can be used with imperfetto to describe a single group of events or conditions, but in that case, precisely because of the imperfetto, it is necessarily interpreted as frequency information, with the meaning a volte sì e per il resto no. While the meaning un certo numero non grande di volte, which numbers are iterations, gets excluded. This selection takes place automatically because the combination of traits of the first meaning, imperfectivity plus frequency, does not pose any problem, while, for the reason explained above, the traits of the second meaning do. More in general, frequency information does not play a role in the choice of a past form of the verb. A peek at compound sentences. In an ordinary register of Italian, we would never describe a sequence of 3 attempts using the following independent clause. Ieri abbiamo trovato Villa Reale chiusa e Marco tentava 3 volte di scavalcare il muro di cinta. On the contrary, the following compound sentence works. Ieri Marco e io abbiamo trovato Villa Reale chiusa e ho dovuto fare il palo mentre tentava 3 volte di scavalcare il muro di cinta. The reason for the difference is that in the second case the whole compound sentence ho dovuto fare il palo mentre tentava 3 volte di scavalcare il muro di cinta is characterized by completeness thanks to the fact that the verb of the independent clause is conjugated in a perfective form. This is not surprising, since the limitations described previously apply only to independent clauses, and here the imperfetto is the verb of a subordinate clause, mentre tentava di scavalcare il muro di cinta. However, there still seems to be a problem. How can the imperfetto coexist in the same clause without count of iterations? The peacemaker is the word mentre. We can imagine that it connects the 3 consecutive attempts along the timeline, forming a time interval, and due to the way this adverb presents time intervals, the imperfetto is understood to refer to the development of the actions and is therefore not involved in their conclusion. Now a personal reflection. Even if we limit ourselves to very simple and colloquial sentences like the one discussed here, the complexity of the scenarios produced by a careful analysis of any natural language makes it clear that communication based on the knowledge of grammatical characteristics is unsuitable for any real-world context of use. When one wants to acquire language skills, studying is in itself useless and potentially harmful. That said, as a tutor I am happy that people insist on understanding and memorizing tons of complex and sometimes intricate things. Thanks to this, I still write and talk about these things, and sometimes I even make money from it. That's all. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.